So Abdul in California, pronouns are he, him. Welcome to the Sunday show. You'd like to argue and ask us a question about Islam. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, I just I was pondering on a question. I would like to just put that forward as to why I feel Islam is actually the true religion. Why I think God actually exists. So when you look at the prophethood of Muhammad, right? So Muhammad was actually an illiterate that could not read or write, but God actually wanted to show his wonders through Muhammad. So he chose an illiterate person where he used, the angel to actually reveal those messages through that person. Then, one day, automatically, this illiterate person just started he was able to read, and he was just saying all these wonderful things, which are actually revelation from God, for example. So I just wanted to put that forward. If that is not God showing himself.
Abdul.
Sorry? Yeah.
You're saying that all of a sudden he could read?
Yeah, he could read, and he was actually...
No. My understanding is that he remained illiterate his whole life.
Sorry?
My understanding is that he remained illiterate his entire life. But in any case, how does this in any way prove a God?
I think that is actually God showing how his wonders.
I know you think that. The question was, how does that show a God?
I know it doesn't really show a God per se. It's not like, God in his physical form appearing, this is God. But I feel like God might not want to do that, but God is actually just showing us that he actually exists by actually putting these wonders down.
I'm still confused here. Abdul, here's what I'm trying to get to. Let's imagine, because there's some confusion about whether or not Muhammad was illiterate, whether or not he remained illiterate. You have no way to demonstrate any of that, so we'll set that aside for a second. But let's just assume that there was someone who was illiterate and they all of a sudden were able to read.
Yep.
What reason could one give to say that this is evidence that God made this change?
I think the evidence I could give, people could give in general, is that if we look at the chain of events that led to that person to be able to read. And as for Muhammad, we actually have evidences that, this person was actually an illiterate all his life. Then he went to the mountain, then woke up one day, came down with the revelation, and he automatically was able to read just within those.
Abdul, listen. I've already said, for the sake of argument, let's assume that Muhammad couldn't read, went up to the mountain, came down and could read. What argument and evidence can you present that shows that the reason he went from not being able to read to being able to read is because God changed that? How do you demonstrate that God did that?
The evidence.
Listen. Don't just say the evidence. Make an argument supported by actual objectively verifiable evidence that shows that God changed someone from being illiterate to literate. How do you do that?
Yeah, so the way I'll do that is if we can consider the amount of days Muhammad spent on the mountain. And I think there's actually a verifiable evidence that Muhammad spent 3 days. And so you can't tell me that within 3 days, someone would actually go up the mountain, learn how to read just within 3 days.
Okay.
Stop. Learning how to read actually take years.
Stop. Listen. Your argument that you just presented is there is no possible way other than God doing it for someone to go up a mountain for 3 days and come back down able to read. How do you demonstrate that God is the only way that could happen?
Okay, the way I would demonstrate God is the only way that could happen is how long it takes a human being, like maybe let's say, for example, individuals, how long does it take people to learn how to read? For example, I think it takes years. It's not something that just happens automatically. It takes a lot of people years, depending on like the person's ability.
Abdul, I
Yeah.
fully understand. I'm fully understand and agree that the normal way people learn to read can't be done in 3 days. But if you got it
Yep.
done in 3 days, how do you show that God is the only possible way for that to happen?
I think the only way we can show God is the only possible way for that to happen is, it's through the wonders that it actually happened in 3 days. That is what I believe. I don't know if you fathom with that argument.
So if I can bridge the gap between the two of you, I think functionally what you're saying, Abdul, is that learning to read in 3 days is basically impossible. And the only person who can do something that's basically impossible is God. Therefore, I think God did it. Is that a fair bridge between you and Matt? Okay.
Yes,
there you go. There you go, Matt. I think that bridged that gap. That's, I think, what he's saying is he thinks that otherwise it would be impossible because 3 days is too short a period of time. And the only alternative explanation he can conceive of is that that must be God.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I helped. I did a helping.
Yeah, but I don't know what Matt thinks about that. So, it's actually an argument I've actually had on my head for like years now. Because
it is a fallacy.
Yeah.
It is a fallacious argument. It is a fallacious argument to state that God is the only way that could happen. You don't know how that could happen. You don't even know if God could do it. You don't know that there is a God who could do it. It's like saying, here's a dead body. How did it die? Well, nobody else was in the room, so God must have given this person a heart attack. You can't reach that conclusion. It's called an argument from ignorance in some senses, where this is true until you prove it false. But in the case that you're talking about, is an argument from personal incredulity is the fallacy, where you think that God is the best explanation for Muhammad's illiteracy. You think that's the best explanation with zero demonstration that God is possible, that God did it, anything else. You're just saying, I can't think of any other way that this could happen, therefore it's God. And that is a fallacious argument that I summarily dismiss. Meanwhile, the only reason we can have a discussion about that is because we granted, for the sake of argument, your claim that Muhammad couldn't read, went up on a mountain for 3 days, and came back down able to read, which you can't demonstrate is true. So we have a proclaimed supposed miracle with zero way to confirm that it actually happened. And you're taking that and you're saying, if it happened, the only way it could have happened was God, which is something else you can't confirm. The plural of anecdote is not data. And when you compound your anecdotes, they don't get stronger, they get weaker. So this is in no way is an argument for the existence of God. You can't prove that it happened. You can't prove that if it happened, God's the only way that it could happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what Matt is saying here is that Muhammad could actually have possibly know how to read before going up the mountain.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Or the story never happened.
Don't you ever fucking say, I think what Matt is saying is, after I clearly said something, and then pretend that I said Muhammad must have been able to read beforehand. That's a fucking lie. It's not what I said. It's not in the ballpark of what I said. I'm going to unmute you. You can apologize, retract it, and try again to summarize what I've said, because I didn't give you any explanation for how Muhammad could read. I pointed out that you can't demonstrate when or whether or not he could. You're unmuted.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now? Yeah, so I'm actually, so apologies for that I might have said that you actually said that. Yeah, apologies. Yeah, but I kind of like, I've noted what you said in regards to that. I think the argument you're making is that we actually don't really have like supporting evidence to support if he was actually unable to read, or if the fact that
Or if he went
Muhammad
up a
was
mountain, or if he came back and was able to read. Like there's a multitude. He's basically saying that it's conjecture all the way down, right? You're starting with the premise that, you know, your specific God exists, that Allah exists. That's your starting point. And then you're saying, okay, well, this story that is designed and built around this God is evidence for that God. And here's one of the stories within within this tradition. And I see that story that's within the tradition that's designed to prove this God. One of those stories, if it's true, would prove that God. And that's both a duh. It's also working backwards. It's all of the fallacies Matt listed. And your step one would be to demonstrate that that story itself was even accurate as it's depicted and as you're relating it to us. So like you're not quite to step one yet.
Yeah,
I think the reason why
Christians,
I would say the story is accurate is because people actually witnessed this. So this was like on a witness account, and this was actually stated in the Hadith, and a lot of people witnessed it. It was like, a witness, people that actually lived around the Prophet witnessed it.
How do you know it's not a lie?
Huh?
How do you know it's not a lie?
Okay, how do I know it's not a lie?
All of this is a story.
I actually did not see people that
rapist,
witnessed
so how do you know it's not a lie?
Okay, I don't.
What's funny? I'm sorry. What's funny, Abdul?
But sorry.
What's funny?
I can't say it's a lie because when you ask me how do I know it's not a lie, I know it's not a lie because I think what's been passed down were actually actual historical accounts of Muhammad's life.
Oh, can I ask you a question? I don't mean to interrupt you for this. Just one sec. I do mean to interrupt you, actually. That was a lie. I do mean to interrupt you. So, Abdul, like if you're saying we should believe any religion that touts to have eyewitness accounts that cooperate the tenets of that religion, then I would have to simultaneously believe in Christianity, Islam, and Mormonism for sure, because they all use that talking point in the same manner, right? Like Christians will talk about the eyewitnesses of Jesus' life and resurrection. Muslims will talk about the eyewitness accounts of Muhammad and his life, and Mormons will talk about the eyewitness accounts of Joseph Smith. So there needs to be some sort of like breaker there, right? There needs to be some way that I, as a person, can look at all three of those stories. All three of those stories lead towards some sort of religious conclusion, and all three of those stories tout eyewitnesses as the evidence for that. So my way of looking at it is there's a broader chance, a much broader chance, that when people say they have eyewitnesses, it's much more mundane claim that those eyewitnesses are either mistaken, or they're potentially motivated to lie, or they were never eyewitnesses to begin with because we're talking about centuries later, or their stories had been corrupted in some fashion, than it is for me to just say the accounts as they are being given to me now, hundreds and hundreds of years later, are something that I should just take at face value, especially given that eyewitness account is kind of not that great to begin with anyway from a psychological standpoint. It's very easily corruptible.
I have a question for Abdul. Well, actually, I have several, but we'll set aside what he thought was funny a minute ago. Did Jesus raise the dead, Abdul?
Jesus?
Did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead?
I don't think so.
Why not? It's been passed down.
I don't think that was actually what happened, and even according to the Quran, I don't think.
Cool. So you think you heard a story about Jesus raising the dead? You don't think it happened, but you heard a story about Muhammad becoming literate in 3 days, and you do think it happened. What's the identifiable evidence that shows why one of those is believable and one of them is not?
Right.
That's
Yeah, I don't know what to say, but
it's a hard question, right?
yeah, it's a question because
Like that goes to my
I
point. You're saying you're making kind of like a special pleading for this group of eyewitnesses, or what you perceive as
so I'm
eyewitnesses.
thinking like the reason why I might want to believe those set of accounts rather than believe the fact that Lazarus was rose from the dead was that Muhammad actually came to correct a lot of like misconceptions surrounding the life of Jesus, for example, and those accounts
Wait,
were
wait, wait,
actually
wait,
stated
wait, Abdul.
wrong. Right?
Abdul, what on earth
Yeah.
makes you think that Muhammad is correcting information about Jesus? What if Muhammad was wrong?
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons God sent the revelations to Muhammad. Maybe it's because
You don't know that God sent any revelations to Muhammad. You're assuming that.
yeah, we believed it to be so.
Yes, I understand you believe it. We're asking, why should someone believe it? You're saying Jesus didn't raise the dead, and you don't believe that story, but you believe a different story about Muhammad, and you believe that Muhammad was right when he supposedly corrected information about Jesus. What is the evidence-based argument for why we should believe Muhammad and not Jesus?
Not really have like any reasons to believe this, but it's just like faith, right? It's
Okay,
yeah,
now
it's
we're
fine.
getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Now we're getting somewhere. Abdul, it's just faith. You don't have a good reason. Thank you. Is there any position, like for example, somebody could say they believe Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and they could say that their reason for that is just faith, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
when somebody says that they believe something and it's just based on faith, they're not only do they not have any way to demonstrate that they're correct, but none of the rest of us have any way to demonstrate who's correct either. So a Jesus believer could say that they just believe on faith that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and you can say that you believe that's wrong and yours is based on faith, which means that faith is not a reliable method to discern the truth, is it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not. But
So
but I think in
do you
response to that, I
care?
No,
really
but
have
no,
pointed.
wait, you're
No,
right there,
I'm
and then he said but.
Yeah.
But
Do you care? Do you care whether or not your beliefs are true?
of course I do care whether or not
Well,
my
you say,
beliefs
of
are true,
course.
and I
You
think
say,
I do believe
you
that.
say, of course, but then you also said that your beliefs are based on faith, which you also acknowledged is not a path to truth. So if you care whether or not your beliefs are true, then you shouldn't be believing things based on faith, because you can believe anything, whether it's true or not, based on faith. You should be looking for a good reason to believe something, and faith is not a good reason. So when you have a good reason to believe that Islam is true, let me know.
Okay, can I say something?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so like before the whole revelation to Muhammad, right? We all know how the Arabs were like they were just like nomads, rearing sheep in Arabia. They weren't even like that really powerful. But when the revelation came, Muhammad actually united Arabia, and what they did after that was actually magnificent. That they actually came out and were
Okay.
able to like use
This
that power
doesn't.
plan to actually
Are you?
expand and
Is this
conquer a
a?
lot
Is
of
this a
places.
one? No,
And
Abdul. Like you're saying, Muhammad did some stuff that I think is neat. Is
You know how many
which may be
people-
the case. I don't know. I'm not a Assyriologist,
Do
but
you know how many people believe that Christianity has made their lives better and has changed civilization for the better?
right.
Billions. And Christianity's already more
billions of
popular.
people.
Yeah, Christianity is more popular than Islam. Christianity has in fact has impacted more people and more cultures for longer than Islam. So if your argument is Muhammad got a revelation and the Arab people benefited from it, well, Christians could make the exact same argument that Jesus came and fundamentally changed the world and went from 0 followers to taking over the world on followers in a really, really short period of time. And you would both be correct in that something happened and something changed after that, but you would also both be fallacious, because post hoc ergo propter hoc is a fallacy, that after this, therefore because of this, and you can't assert that it's because anything in Islam or Christianity is true. Religious ideas change people and change the world, and some of them change the world for the better, even though the religion itself is not true. If you went through all of that discussion and said, can I say just one more thing, and thought I was just going to let you spew another fallaciously written treatise on how Islam is real, you were much mistaken. You need to go find actual evidence for your positions and not make fallacious appeals to the popularity of our idea, how many people believe it, how much they think it's changed or benefited them. Because I'll tell you this, Islam, while it has done many things for many people, is absolutely the harbinger of doom that despises women, despises mathematics, and actually cripples the brain and the culture to the point where the Arabic culture, who discovered 0, now have 0 because of Islam. Islam is a prison for the mind that was built by a child-raping liar.
Matt, can I say something?
No, I think you should think for a while.
That's a lie.
No, it's not a lie. Well, it's not a lie in the sense that I'm telling you what Muslims have actually said about Muhammad. I don't know whether or not he actually had sex with the 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old that he married. I can't prove that. But I'm just telling you what Muslims think, and how I sat there and debated Daniel Hakikachu and others who have defended this notion that pretend that child marriage is it's just some cultural norm that the secular West is opposed to. It's rape. Muhammad, if he did what the writings say he did, was a vile, disgusting, child-raping piece of human garbage. And if a God chose that person to be the prophet of that religion, that God is an immoral fucking monster as well. You should be embarrassed trying to make light, trying to make good of this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow. I'm the executive producer of The Line. And at night, I sneak into Matt Dillahunty's house and I trade his cereals for other cereals. He comes out and he's like, wait, these are cereals I buy, but I swear I had different cereals. Anyway, would you like to support this channel or any specific show? You can do so over on Patreon or in channel memberships. There are special tiers for special shows or for the channel at large, and it helps us expand programming as well as hopefully very soon launch it in podcast form. Now, also, if you'd like to support, you can like, you can subscribe, you can leave a comment or a super thanks, which is a special highlighted comment that you pay for. Those are fun. And, screw the algorithm, go check out something over here, I suppose. Boy, I hope I can still put those icons there, because if I can't, this is going to look really stupid. I'm going to go buy some Cocoa Puffs and switch out Matt's mini wheats now.